and we thank you for being with us. So let's go ahead and Stephanie, and take me to the next slide. Just a reminder, our Southern Inland Region Technical Assistance Center encompasses 4 counties: Inyo, Mono, Riverside, and San Bernardino. And we also have core partners that work with us and will be coming into the webinars coming up very soon. We have Capacity to Impact, we have California School-Based Health Alliance, and we have Los Angeles Education Partnership. And they will also be there at our convening on September 29th. We hope to see you there too. Next slide. Here's our vision. And we know we bring it up every time, but we want to make sure that everyone gets a chance to see it and read it. The one thing as we move forward, if you have a vision that you've created, feel free to drop it in. You can copy and paste it. You can put it in as a link, but feel free to put it in the chat because we would like to see if you built a vision too. So we're going to move past this kind of quickly, but if you do have something, make sure you drop it in. Next slide. All right, you can see who our Southern Inland Regional grant awardees are. It's always good to know. And these are always on our slide deck, so it's a chance for you once again to see them again. Stephanie, go ahead and take me to the next slide. This is our team. We have our director, Jennifer Gately. I'm program manager, David Culberhouse. We have Dr. Ebony Kemp and Siobhan Monterosa, who are our community schools coordinators, and they're just waiting to take over from me this afternoon. So I'm moving ahead because I know they have a lot to share today. Take me into the next slide. If you can take just a quick 30 seconds here, make sure to sign in. And then you can also use the QR code or the resource link in the chat to pull up the peer learning materials for today. I'll give you about 30 seconds to do that, and we appreciate it. All right, Stephanie, go ahead and take me to the next slide. Here's our agenda for today. You can see we had our introductions. We'll get into a welcoming ritual in just a few minutes. Really going to spend a lot of time around some of the fundamentals and the overarching values today, as well as the capacity building strategies. So that's where we're going to spend the meat of our afternoon today. So go ahead and take me into the next slide. And you can see our outcomes. I'm going to take about 10 minutes and read those to you. I'm just kidding. Just a chance to take a look at those for today's session. And move me on to the next slide, Stephanie. So one of the things that, you know, when I think of the work of Otto Scharmer and Peter Senge, one of the things that's really important in looking at systems transformation is having awareness of your systems. That's really important. And we thought this would be an interesting welcoming ritual for today. And we're going to have you go in and discuss with another person. We want you to think of something in your system that you feel is expiring, maybe starting to become irrelevant, something that maybe doesn't belong in the system anymore. And then also on the other side, discuss something that's emerging, something that is starting to emerge in your system. You can kind of almost think about it from the picture there. Where's the caterpillar and where's the butterfly? And so I'm going to have Stephanie, we're going to just put you in groups for about 5 minutes. And so if you're sharing with another person, just kind of be aware of the time. But, you know, where's your caterpillar? And then where's your butterfly that's expiring or emerging in your system? I'm gonna look, and if anyone's alone, I'll just move in. It's probably better if I'm not muted when I ask questions. Is everyone back, or are we still got a few in the breakout rooms? We good? All right. Does anyone want to unmute and just share anything that came out of your conversation? Feel free to take turns. We don't want everyone all at once. Anyone? All right. I'll keep moving us forward then. Go ahead, Stephanie, and take us to the next slide. All right. And I know all of us have seen this, but it's good to bring it up because we have these conversations all the time when we think about the 4 pillars and the conditions of learning and those cornerstone commitments and proven practices, and what does that look like, and do we have to have them all at once? Those are questions that I think we're always struggling with, and it's really thinking about how it works in your context. So we like to keep those front and center each time. Go ahead, Stephanie, and take me to the next slide. And you can see here, this is where we're going to spend a lot of time today. When you look at the foundation here, it's really around the overarching values. And the question that, we were discussing was, if this is the foundation, how often do we really talk about values? How often do we talk about what values are and what are our own values, and how is that leading our priorities? So Stephanie, take us into the next slide. And just threw values up there, but go ahead and take me to the next. So we really wanted to spend a little bit of time here. We're going to take you back into a breakout room, but what are the importance of values, and how is that leading the way we work, in the decisions that we make, in the priorities that we have, and guiding our decisions? Because when some of those things aren't front and center, it's really difficult when things come across on how you're going to make the decisions that move you forward. And it's allowing us to bring our authentic self to the table when we're in our meetings and when we're working together. So those are things to think about. And then Stephanie, take me to the next slide. So here's how we're going to connect. How do your values guide you in your current role at your organization? And if the conversation finishes up a little bit quick, discuss also, how are you starting to bring in the overarching values that are shared at the beginning? And so keep those things in mind. How are your values guiding you in your current role? And then Stephanie's going to put you into some breakout rooms and allow you a little bit of chance to connect around this and how those values are guiding your work. All right, looks like we're all back. Is there anyone? No, no one was willing to do this last time, so let's see what happens here this time. Is there anyone willing to just unmute and share something that that you were like, wow, I really appreciated that in your breakout room?
I'll go.
Go
Thank
ahead.
you.
In our room, I was speaking about my background growing up, just being an African American female and in poverty. And I lived in Los Angeles, was a big metropolitan city. Some things are caught and not taught, and you learn certain things. And it's always used to be a deficit. Oh, you're just, black girl in a poor neighborhood and things like that. But those actually really make you stronger, and those give you a set of principles and values because of those lived experiences you take to your job. And then when I got in school counseling, I understood a lot of things because of the values. My mom said, you work hard, you go to school, you fight through barriers, you still do what you need to do. You transfer those into your job. So now that I'm not a school counselor anymore, I'm at the district office, I still have that background of the whole child. And I understand that kids come with different things, even kids of not poor or whatever, or not of color or whatever, they come with different things. You got to understand that. But had I not grew up the way I grew up, I probably wouldn't have been able to. Well, I probably would have, but it's a different level of empathy that you gain when you live in something. So that's what I wanted to share.
No, I really appreciate that because you're amplifying your experiences to help serve others and help help people through the experiences they're going through. And I think that's incredibly important. So thank you very much for sharing that.
Yeah, no problem.
Anyone else?
Well, what we talked about is that you really have to be on board with valuing community and in addressing the whole child. You realize that it takes a village, like they say, and yeah, having the empathy and the background, but actually really believing that everybody, all the stakeholders have to be involved and on board for this to work. So you have to really value community and collaboration in order for this to work for us.
Thank you very much. And I appreciate both of you sharing. And I know my two coordinators have a lot to share. So at this point, I am going to hand it over and let them take you on this journey for today.
Good afternoon. It's Siobhan Monterosa, Community Schools Coordinator. I want to thank Ms. Quintero for setting me up perfectly, because what we want to talk about is how we build capacity in all of our partners, our students, our families and caregivers, our community partners, our leadership, teachers, staff, everybody who's involved. And in order to do that, we have to root ourselves in the why of this community schools work. And thankfully, we have values, community school, California Community School Partnership Program values set in place that are the foundation to the work that we're doing in the rest of the framework. And we're going to quickly go over those 4 overarching values. And I want everyone to think about what resonates with them and where your community school journey, where your community school journey has a place to grow in these values. Where does your journey need to lean in to these values? So Stephanie, let's go to the first or the next one. The next slide. So the values are to help you set your why, but also we have to make sure we're building capacity in our steering committee, in our staff, when we're out there messaging community schools, because those people who are participating, they have to know the why too. The why of community schools, it has to be theirs too, and they have to understand it, or there will be a gap in how we implement this approach to school improvement. Next slide. 4 values: racially just, relationship-centered spaces, shared power, classroom community connections, and a focus on continuous improvement. Next slide. So with each one, I'd like you to drop in the chat, first thing that comes to your mind when you see this overarching value. What comes to mind? Is it a concern about the spaces in your school community, in your LEA, in your school, in your organization? Is it like, wow, we rock that? Students are represented, we're inclusive, this is fantastic. Yes, I agree. Drop something in the chat. What's the first thing that comes to your mind when you lean into this overarching value? Absolutely important, Dr. Sanford. And additionally, I think the framing is ideal because not only do we want to be racially just, but we want the spaces that we're in to be just due to relationship. We built them because we have relationship with each other in an inclusive fashion. And we want to ensure that our spaces, our educational, instructional, organizational, business spaces are racially just. Thank you. Next slide, Ms. Stephanie. Good to hear we're on the right path. Shared power. And this one's extremely important as we are embarking on the community schools journey, because shared power involves everyone. And this is the space where our student voice comes in. This is the space where our family caregiver voice comes in. And while many times school happens to the people that we are serving, this is the opportunity for them to be a part of the decision making. And not, let's just say, we've all experienced times when that has been feigned or not completely implemented. This is the time for that to be fully implemented. And it is with shared power that we improve schools. It's with the partnerships across all stakeholders and partners. So with this shared power, I want you to drop in on a scale 1 to 5. How successful are you sharing the power with all your partners? 1 to 5. Where are you right now? Quick self-assessment. Agency is a great word, saying thank you, thank you, thank you. And this is a continuum, right? In the spirit of continuous improvement, we might be at a 2 today. As a former principal, I know there were days that I lived at a 2, but some days we're at a 5. And so how do we get that in a consistent practice is a question. Next slide. Classroom and community connections. This is the portion of our community school journey that is doing school differently. Where do we see the community in our classrooms? And where do we see our community as a classroom, and vice versa, and intertwined every way you can switch those two words? What is the connection between those two things? Do you have partners coming into the school site? Are we working with partners professionally or instructionally? Does the community and society feed our instructional development and what we're doing in the classroom? What are those connections? Connecting when there's opportunity to the real world, but to the lived world when we have the chance? Or are we keeping our students on pen and paper, screen and keyboard? So with classroom community connections, what excites you? Drop something quick in the chat. What excites you when it comes to classroom and community connections? As I was leaving my principalship, I was excited to see our business organization in the city helping our entrepreneurs on campus develop their businesses. High school kids who had ideas. Opportunity is exactly how I saw it. Opportunity to expand the access that young people have. Opportunity for different learning. Next slide, Stephanie. a focus on continuous improvement. Phrases like and ideologies such as growth mindset have been at the forefront of our industry recently. But we really have to make sure that the work we're doing in community schools is questioned, monitored, and then followed up upon in order for the work to be successful. So for example, we have some grantees in cohort planning 2 or 1, and this is the second year of planning. And maybe your advisory, you've been coming to webinars and you're looking at your advisory or steering committee and thinking, hey, we're missing somebody. It's that check for understanding, if you will, to say, okay, let's get the right people at the table. So let's keep monitoring what we're doing so that we can make sure students are learning with all the improvements and all the changes and all the work we're putting into our community schools program. And Stephanie, next slide. So one more chat conversation. Instead of breaking out into breakout rooms, let's just throw this last one in the chat too. Choose a value that is currently in action at your school site, LEA, or organization. Which one is in action? I know we already talked about one, but which one? Choose one that you've already got in place and drop it in the chat. Sorry. Classroom community connection, nice. Valuing and learning more about equity. And I might pick on somebody, Miss Trisha.
Yes.
Can you just speak to a little bit of the community connection, just because I know it's kind of cool?
For us, it's what our charter is pretty much built on, is character education, community service, getting out into the community and making those connections and having it be a two-way street. So our community supports us and we support the community. Our classrooms as well. I mean, not only do our students do individual community service, but each grade level does a separate community service. So we already have a true connection to many agencies in our community. And so with the community schools, this is just going to grow even bigger, which is kind of exciting.
It does. It is exciting. And I can't wait to see the work that SOAR does. All right. So thanks for sharing in the chat. And I'm going to pass it over to Dr. Kemp.
It would help if I got off of mute. Good afternoon. How's everyone doing? So we're going to talk about the whole idea of transformation. As we know, the community schools model is not a checklist. It's about transforming school as once we currently know to a structure where our kids can get all their needs met as well as our parents. So as we go back to this model, the California way, and we're looking at the foundation of the overarching values, as we transform our schools to community schools, how do we properly guide and gauge our progress? If you can drop it in the chat. So how do we properly guide and gauge our progress as we're transforming over to the community schools model? Consistent communication with various groups, yes. Checking through surveys to ensure we are serving our community needs assessment. Right, because it takes the whole school. We all have to gauge our progress because a big part of our California Community Schools framework is that continuous improvement piece. We should be making sure on a yearly basis that we are checking the needs of our school sites and districts, and that we're continuing seeing how we're building assets. And last, how do we emphasize the use of meaningful measures and data that continuously help us shape community schools? So I know surveys was one mentioned, but what other data pieces do we continuously look at to make sure that the system that we're putting in place for our sweethearts are working? School attendance, absolutely. We know right now in the state of California, chronic absenteeism is huge. And we need to work to make sure, what can we do? What can we provide at school that's preventing our sweethearts from attending? Attendance improvement, academic performance, revisiting progress on strategic plans, parent engagement. Absolutely, because we need our parents and families in this journey. They need to be bought into their children's education just as much as we are as the educators on the site and at the district level. Our SIPSA, yes, our single plan is just not a plan that sits up on a shelf, right? Throughout the year, you should be monitoring the progress and see if you're hitting your goals, because that's a responsibility of reporting back to your parents on how we're doing. Parent engagement, yes. And reviewing the SIPSA. Thank you for those data measures. Next slide. Going to capacity strategies. So as you know, we just hit the overarching values that we just got through discussing, the 4. Now we're going to talk about capacity building strategies. Capacity building strategies is a huge part of the foundational work for our California Community Schools framework. It is a developmental rubric that serves as a roadmap. It guides us on how do we transform our schools to just brick and mortar to that actual community school. It focuses on evidence-based practices, and it aligns with the overarching values in our California Community Schools framework. Next slide. So we have 9 capacity building strategies when we talk about the foundation of community schools. Shared understanding and commitment, collective priorities, which is setting goals and taking action, collaborative leadership, coherence, staffing and sustainability, strategic community partnerships, professional learning, community-based curriculum and pedagogy, and progress-minded and possibility thinking. So these are the 9 main capacity building strategies that we are looking at when we talk about our California Community Schools framework. Next slide, please. So when we talk about our capacity building strategies rubric, there's 3 areas that we are looking at. We are looking at visioning, engaging, and transforming. So it's showing you how does a community school framework looks when you're in the visioning stage. How does it look when you're in the engaging stage? And how does it look when you're in the transforming stage? Again, these capacity building strategies is a roadmap. So it's helping you going from the beginning to implementation and actions. Next slide. So visioning, when we're at the beginning growth of our community school framework, we're visioning. That means we're aware that we need this framework at our school site and for our district. And we're starting to organize those pieces to put in place. Engaging is when we're in that space of we are learning. We're starting to make plans in order to effectively implement this community schools framework. And last is that transforming piece, the action and implementation space. So again, this growth and development of taking it from the beginning where was just the idea and bringing it into action. Next slide, please. So this is where we're going to go into alignment, because a lot of people are like, well, how does these capacity building strategies fit in with this California Community Schools framework? How does it relate to those overarching values? Well, it's all about alignment, aligning these pieces. So with the 4 overarching values that were just shared earlier, there are specific capacity building strategies that align to each value. So for racially just relationship-centered spaces, We have the strategies that are shared understanding and commitment, collaborative leadership, strategic community partnerships, centering community-based curriculum and pedagogy. For shared power, again, shared understanding and commitment, collective priorities, collaborative leadership. As you start to read these, you start to see the common theme and how it lines up to that specific value. So again, these are capacity building strategies for each overarching value. Next slide, please. So alignment. Get used to that word because you're going to see it all up and down the community schools framework for California. Next slide. So with the capacity building strategies, the way we look at it is there's an action step, there's a value related, and there's a strategy. Again, alignment, an action, value, and strategy. So we're going to go back to the 2 action steps that we went over in our community of transformational practice. We spoke about our assets and needs assessment, and we spoke about our collaborative leadership structure, which is your steering committee, your advisory council that's taking you through the process of building your community schools framework for your school site. So with the assets and needs assessment, the capacity building strategy that's aligned with it is collective priorities, setting goals and taking action. And for our collaborative leadership structure, which is our steering committees, our advisory council, collaborative leadership, right? Because that is everyone working together for that shared decision-making. Next slide, please. So let's go into the action of collaborative leadership structure, which is our steering committee and advisory council. So we have shared a resource which deals with all the strategies needed for the collaborative leadership structure the last time we had met. And when you're talking about a collaborative leadership structure, you're talking about a shared decision-making model, distributing leadership, and it allows more individuals to have a role in the efforts of the community schools framework. And examples would be your steering committees, your school site councils, any site-based instructional teams, student support team, parent and student leadership groups, such as PTAs, right? The overarching values that align with this are racially just relationship-centered spaces, right? Because we have to respect all the cultures that come to the table. Shared power, because we are being collaborative and leadership is distributed. So we are working all together to make these decisions. So the capacity building strategy that meets with this is collaborative leadership. Next slide. So when we're looking at the strategy of collaborative leadership in the chat, how do right now do you use collaborative leadership as you're building your community schools framework at your school site? Right now, how does that look? Yep. Communicating the what and why to our stakeholders, getting feedback, shared facilitation, leading from the middle, building human capital, yes. Building capacity and trust, yes. So in order to have an effective collaborative leadership structure, right, that we spoke about when you're doing your steering committee and when you're doing your advisory council, yes, everyone has to have training. We all have to be on the same page, right? So that means there has to be a shared understanding of what the community schools framework is. Shared power. Everyone in the room has a voice. Everyone's opinion is respected and heard because it's all about coming to the decision that is best for the environment of our sweethearts and our families. We're trying to work together to improve any services that we currently have on campus at the district. What's effective, what's not effective? And also, how do we sustain those that are effective and continue to add more resources so our sweethearts can benefit even more? Next slide, please. So within there's a resource guide called the Capacity Building Strategies that has rubrics for each of those 9 capacity building strategies that was listed. So this is an example at the LEA level, and the page is listed right there on how it looks from the beginning to the end when you are building a steering committee and advisory council. As you know, before you can conduct any kind of needs assessment and asset assessment, we have to have a steering committee or advisory council that's representative of all the schools that are taking place in the community schools framework within your district. So at the LEA level, when you're visioning, this is the beginning stage, right? You are building your team. Who is going to be on the team? We are organizing because we know we have to set up the best team possible to get us through this process. So we're visioning. Next, we're going to engaging. Again, we have to build the capacity. We have to make sure everyone understands the information. So we are building and learning, right, to get that same message on how this community schools framework is going to look. And next, we're transforming. So now when we're transforming, we're doing the work. We're putting the needs and assets assessment plan together. We are conducting the needs and asset plan. We're going out as a group and communicating. This is what we're trying to do for our district and our school as we build the California Community Schools framework. Again, going from the we're aware, we're organizing, we're building, we're learning. Now we're putting it in place with the action. So going from visioning to transforming. Next slide. So we discussed the actions of steering committees and advisory councils and how that aligns to the overarching values in the capacity building. Next, we're going to talk about the action of needs and assets assessment. So as we know, before we can do any kind of implementation plan for the California Community Schools framework as a grantee, we have to make sure that we are doing a proper assessment to know what are the needs of our families and students and campuses, and what are the current assets we have in order to determine where those gaps are at and how that framework can help us fill those gaps to transform our schools to community schools. So we know that's a collaborative process. It regards deep engagement. We're looking at data, that whole transformation piece, and it's collective responsibility. It's not just on one person, it's on everyone involved in the process. So the 2 overarching values that's related to that is shared power, right? We are working together to collect this needs and assets assessment and conduct it and get the data together and share the data. And we're focusing on continuous improvement. It's not just a one and done. You are doing this every year to make sure that you are transforming, you're really doing the transformational work needed to implement the community schools framework at your site, at your district, which means you are doing this all the time. And we should be doing anyway. Like mentioned earlier, that was part of the purpose of the single plan, right? To make sure that we are continuously improving. But this is the next level because we're not just talking about checklisting, we're talking about transforming. So the capacity building strategy that's related to this is collective priorities, which are setting goals and taking action, right? Because once that needs and assets assessment is done and you've communicated the results and organized the results and came up with your gap and analysis plan, you have to set some goals and take action. So that's the capacity building strategy that's related. Next one, please. So again, the strategy of collective priorities, setting goals, and taking action. We're going to identify collective priorities. So what are the priorities of your site? What are the priorities of your district in regards to transforming to a community schools framework? And where are those shared focus areas that are critical to your community that will have the most impact and that will sustain over time. Next slide, please. And again, there's a rubric. Again, you're going from that visioning to engaging to transforming. So at the beginning, you're getting an idea and getting your tools together. So I'm about to do the needs and assets assessment. What am I going to use? That's the visioning part. What data pieces I'm going to look at? We got to organize what tools we're going to use, what survey. What are we going to do to collect data? That's the visioning piece. Where we're going to the engaging, we have to understand how those tools will work together to get us the most effective data. So you're, as a group, working together to learn how those surveys work, how this assessment plan work, how does this tool work? How are we going to organize our data? Like, we all have to learn that together. And the transforming part is, now let's conduct it. And after we conduct it, we're going to put our ideas together. We're going to share out our data. We're going to organize it. We're going to analyze it, the action step. Again, going from the visioning to engaging to transforming. Next slide, please. And this is the same thing, it's just what happens on the site level. Because as you know, when you go into the needs and assets assessment, there's two ways you can do it. You can do it as a district. So we have some of our smaller districts that apply just as a district. So they're just doing it at the district level. However, for our bigger districts, you're just doing it at your school site level. So again, you have that advisory council that's at your school site, and you guys are going through this process of conducting that needs assessment at the school site level. And the same process, just going from the visioning, engaging to transforming. Next slide, please. So, one of the big focal overarching values, if you notice, for both of those action steps is shared power. So why shared power? The school belongs to all of us. The district belongs to all of us. There is not one person responsible for this going wrong or that going wrong. It's all of us. It's a democratic space. Everyone has a voice. Your shared ownership. We all are in this together. This is our school. This is our community. Deep engagement through talks, through the assessment. And then also that shared power empowers other people. Can you imagine the empowerment of our parents, where they build that knowledge, how more engaged they would be and that better understanding they would have? Next slide. And how is it represented in the community school framework? We have that collaborative leadership pillar, right? How are educators and administrators collaborating for the betterment of our schools? Conditions of learning, right? That's all of us have a say in that. It's that commitment to shared decision-making. We have all these different leadership councils on campus, from School Site Council, English Language Advisory Council, PTA, all these councils, your school leadership teams, all of these are shared decision-making structures that's helping make decisions at your school site to make sure needs are being met. And last, shared power that's effective when making decision-making. So the question is, next slide. We're going to go in breakout rooms. And the question is, knowing that shared power is huge when it comes to transforming your school to a community school model, how have you utilized shared power during the development of transforming your school site or district to a community school model? And we're going to put you in breakout groups.
There's a few singles, so I'm gonna head out into a room.
Yes. I was sharing with my group that one of the concerns that I have when sharing power is that this is like especially when we look at one of the pillars, family engagement. Uh, and this goes back to the values that we bring with us, right? To me, because I come from a very close family, to me, family is one of the biggest factor in the positive results for our students. You know, as before being a TS8, I was a teacher, and every time I will get the parents involved, not only would I get high academic results, but also social emotional factors. But being now a community school teacher, I noticed that in our school community council, we don't have any parents. And I keep on asking, hey, where are the parents? And they go, it's okay, we don't need to have parents, but I keep on asking. And it could be that, again, it's my values that I have. Like I said, we bring our own baggage into, and that's my, but why we don't have parents? And that concerns me because remember, this is everybody sharing the power. But I feel like we almost don't want to share the power with the parents by not including them in that decision making. But I could be wrong, but that's my perspective, no, we need to bring those parents because we need to hear what they want. They need to be part of this. So please, somebody enlighten me if I'm going, the wrong way, but I want to have parents in my council, community school council.
Would anybody like to share who had maybe the same situation or same scenario and how they increased their parent engagement? Because that is a great question.
Can I add something? I have a lot of parents. I do classes with parents and they come, but I'm talking about the council where the decisions are being made. When we talk about the budget, when we talk about what is it that we want to add or delete from the implementation plan, that's where we don't invite the parents.
Does anyone have any suggestions or comments that can add or assist?
Well, I know on my council, which I started a little bit into the school year already, but we've already invited 2 parents in and they've agreed, and I actually accessed them from the school site council parents that were involved, and they gave me a little time to kind of just give a quick overview of what community schools is and our vision and how we can work together. And I had 2 parents fortunately volunteer right away. But that for me, that's I think we discussed having a minimum of 2 parents on our council to have that voice. And then we have teachers, and then we have our classified ambassador, and then ourselves. So I thought that was a requirement to have the parent piece. So maybe that's something just to talk to your administrator about, because that's an essential part of our council. So I thought it was a requirement, as a matter of fact. And parent engagement, to be honest, at the school site I'm at now is very low. So it's really hard, and I am kind of accessing the same parents that are on ELAC or school site council or volunteering for book club. But if it has to be them for right now until they can get the word out, then I'm going to use whoever's on campus and willing parents, and then hopefully it grows from there. But I don't want to burn those few parents out, but I'm just really stressing how important their voice is. And most of them have been very positive, because they want to hear more and they want to be involved. So I have a tiny little group of them right now, but I'm hoping they'll spread the word.
And yes, we should have parent voice on our steering committees. They are essential. I know sometimes it's they may not come, or it's always the same two parents. Well, you know what? I'd rather have the same two parents that at least can give some insight, because I promise you, other parents talk to them. They probably have their ear to the ground because they're so involved that usually parents will ask, if they know certain people involved, they will ask those particular parents certain things that they wouldn't necessarily come and ask an administrator or ask a teacher, because it's on a parent to parent level, right? So it's that level of comfortability. They feel comfortable talking to them and asking them questions. But yes, parent voice is definitely big with the steering committees.
And I know it's different because part of LCAP is differentiated assistance. And one of the things that we did this last year is we invited parents into the process with administrators. I know it's a little different than community schools, but the nice thing about it was that they often brought their student or child with them. And it was so engaging because everyone in the group wanted to hear what the student had to say. And they're often not at the table. And so even in that differentiated assistance process, just hearing the voice of the students, they just had all the adults like, okay, tell us more, and so all that's so important, because sometimes they can bring their kid too, and then you get that voice from both of them. So thank you for sharing.
Something else I wanted to suggest that I just came to mind is that we did have to set our meeting to what time was most convenient for those parents. And my administrator was great in working to get coverage for the teachers for that morning, because then they did need subs in their classroom. So we really try to accommodate the parent piece, because they're the voice where we were having trouble bringing in. So work with your admin on that, because my admin was great at finding coverage for everybody in the school to accommodate the parents. So that's how we do that.
I think, the parents want to be part of it.
Yeah.
High school, we have a lot of parent involvement. We get a lot of parents in our meetings. Is when it comes to being part of the decision making that they're not allowed to be. And how do I deal with administration that is not allowing the parents to be part of that? That's my question to you, because no, we get a lot of parents that come and we let the students come and everything. I didn't want to be very honest, but that's it. It's how do we deal with an administration that says, no, Martha, it's okay. Parents don't have to be part of this. They wouldn't understand.
So Martha, what we're gonna do? After we're gonna, if you can, once we get off, stay on, because we probably need to set up some time with you.
Okay.
That way we can work through that. No problem.
Thank you.
And thank you for sharing. It takes a lot of vulnerability and that will to want to transform to community schools to just voice what's going on. So thank you for sharing. We appreciate that.
And let me add one thing. One of the things that we want to do as we move forward and as we build relationships with you is that a lot of times some of the concerns or challenges we're facing, someone's already solving. And so if anyone out there has really gone through this and they've want to talk about the process, just reach out and email us, because then we can set that up in our coming webinars. And anytime we can highlight work that you're doing, that's something that's definitely on our radar. So if someone's dealt with that and they'd like to share their experience, I think it's helpful for everyone when we can share those experiences. So feel free to email us or reach out for upcoming webinars.
Can we have the next slide, please? So we're at the end of our peer learning, and we're going to do an optimistic closure. And if you notice, during every meeting, we are doing a welcoming ritual, we have engagement in the middle, and we have an optimistic closure. So if you would like to know where that format comes from, it comes from the SEL 3 Practices Playbook. That is in our resource folder. So feel free to look at it. They're great activities for when you're having a meeting, because we need everybody to be engaged and to give us time for reflection and get an idea of how everyone is doing for the day. So today's optimistic closure is going to be appreciation, apology, and an aha. So in the chat, you're going to identify appreciation, apology, or aha, which is like a light bulb moment that just boop, it connected, that you can share with the group. So you can say, I appreciate blank because of X, Y, and Z. I want to apologize because it's been a rough day. So I wasn't engaged the way I normally would, but I got the information, right? And my aha is, I didn't realize X, Y, and Z. So if you can place that in the chat, that would be greatly appreciated.
As you're going through, I just want to make a quick remark, because I know, Martha, you said thank you for listening to my concerns. I came out of LCAP and we used to do office hours, and a lot of people would just show up because they just wanted to hear the questions that were asked. Because a lot of times what you're thinking, we're all thinking. And so just bringing that out, each of you, and being willing to share allows each of us to learn more. And so for each of us, it's a positive. You know, it's a chance for us to each learn, because a lot of times we're all working through some of the same challenges. So when you bring those things out, it's really important. So thank you.
And I was just reading all of the posts, and the appreciations is very greatly appreciated. And yes, I've seen some people are a little burnt out from meetings today. So even though you apologize, I want to send an appreciation message out to you, because you could have been tired and say, I'm not getting on, but you still got on to make the attempt to be here and engage. So thank you. We're human. We're not perfect. We're tired. It's the end of the day, but that's why we have each other. And again, if you need anything, we are here. So just don't be afraid to reach out to us. Next slide, please.
Hi, everybody. So there's a QR code for a feedback survey there, and we'd like you all to complete that. And Ms. Stephanie has dropped it in the chat as well. Please complete the feedback survey. We want to make sure we are meeting your needs to the best of our abilities. And I can't wait to see, I hope, some of you at our partnership convening on the 29th. We want to connect with you in person and connect with the other partners in the RTAC. So please come out. The registration is in the chat, or registration link is in the chat as well. And we hope to see you all there. Next slide. Our upcoming dates. We're October 12th and October 18th. If you have not registered, please do. I lost my thought. Please log in and register, and we hope to see you next month as we explore more of our resources and content. And next slide. Also register for our State Transformational Assistance Center webinars. The state team is providing a lot of support and a lot of resources as well. And we want to see you there, and then we collaborate around the work that they're sharing, and it will continue to support the work that you are doing at your site and district. Next slide. Also, the collective learning space. If there's time in your schedules, there's an additional opportunity to be in a collective learning space at the state level. So there's an opportunity to sign up there. Next slide. And as I have mentioned, and David has mentioned, and Dr. Kemp has mentioned, please, please, please reach out to us if you need additional support, or if you have questions, you want to schedule a meeting. Email addresses are there. Just let us know what you need, and we can't wait to begin coaching and supporting all of you at your districts. And we appreciate you being here. This is last slide.